Jay, thank you for flying all the way here from Phoenix, Arizona.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Okay.
So make a short intro in Hebrew. אוקיי, אז 3 עובדות שלא ידעתם על ג'יי רוג'רס. הוא היה קצין קרבי במרינס ולחם בקרבות הכי קשים של המלחמה האחרונה בעיראק. הוא זכה לציון לשבח מהנשיא אובמה על החברה שהוא הקים. הוא נפגש עם שי אגסי. נפגש עם שי אגסי בתחילת הדרך, עוד כשבטר פלייס הייתה סטארט-אפ צעיר ומבטיח. הוא לא רק רוצה לשנות את העולם, הוא משנה את העולם. Changing the world. לוקל מוטורס היא קונספט חדש שלא היה קיים בעולם עד שבעצם רוג'רס ברא אותו. אז כיצד יראו מכוניות בעולמנו אם תהיה לנו הזדמנות לעצב את הצורה שלהם? סביר להניח שלרובנו זה לא היה אכפת, אבל למנכ"ל ומייסד לוקל מוטורס, ג'יי רוג'רס, העניין בער בעצמות, ולכן הוא הקים קהילה מקוונת שמאפשרת למעשה לכל אחד להיות שותף לתהליך תכנון המכוניות הקהילתיות. כלומר, מכוניות שמתאימות את עצמם לצרכים של קהילות באזורים גיאוגרפיים שונים או בעלי צרכים שונים. ייצור רכב באמצעות הקהילה לא רק תביא לרכבים מותאמים לקהילות ואזורים שונים, אלא גם תוזיל את עלויות הייצור ותביא לגמילה של ארצות הברית בעולם המערבי מהתלות בנפט, על ידי כך שתעודד פיתוח רכבים ירוקים וזולים. אז מאז שלוקל מוטורס הושקע, השיקו בחברה רכב שטח וגדול שנקרא ראלי פייטר, מותאם לתנאי השטח הקשים, לחום של פיניקס, עיר מגוריו של רוג'רס, אבל הם גם השיקו אופנוע, אופניים ואפילו רכב לשליחים של פיצה, שהוצבו כולם על ידי הקהילה בעצמה. לוקל מוטורס בניהולו נחשבת כיום לאחת מיצרניות הרכב המסקרנות ביותר באמריקה, ומי שהוכתרה כחברה שממציאה מחדש מושגי יסוד בתעשייה. היא מרתקת לא רק כחברת רכב, אלא בכלל כגוף עם גישה חדשנית לעולם הוותיק והשמרני של התעשייה, לעולם העסקים בכלל. אנחנו כבר מסיימים. היא הוקמה לפני 6 שנים בפרופיל נמוך, אבל בשנתיים האחרונות התקשורת האמריקאית, החל מהניו יורק טיימס ודרך הביזנס וויק ועד האתר של ג'יי לנו, מסקרת אותה בהתפעמות הולכת וגדלה, אפילו קיבלה חיבוק גדול מהנשיא אובמה שביקר את לוקל מוטורס, ומביא אותה כדוגמה לתעשייה חדשה שבה הייצור הזה מתחיל בעצם מלמטה, ייצור הרכבים מתחיל מלמטה. Hi again. So, Rogers, you were a very high-ranking officer in the Marines. You have a promising career. How the hell did you arrive to producing cars?
So that's a fair question, and I think that everybody in life has a chosen calling, and mine was not to finish life as a military officer, but was to make the biggest difference that I could in the world making vehicles. And 2 of my friends were killed in 2004, and I found myself the father of 1 son, almost 2 sons, and I had a moment where I had just come back from patrol, and I was able to do a once a week call with my wife, and we were on the phone, and she was filling up the car with gas, and I suddenly realized that here I was fighting in a place for stability based on oil that comes out of the ground almost without trying, and my wife was filling up a car, not thinking about the fact that if she didn't have to fill up the car, then I wouldn't have to be there. And it was just shocking to me when my friends were killed that not only was it not about a convenience, about not having to be there, but it was about making a difference so that no one would have to fight over oil in the future.
So your wife is to blame, actually.
She is to blame, yes.
Okay,
don't tell her I said that.
So what is actually a car that the ordinary person from the street can develop? And how can I develop myself a car? How can it happen?
So I often say that if the internet were around when Henry Ford and Gottlieb Daimler started Mercedes and started Ford Motor Company, we would have different cars in the world today, and people would be much more engaged. So right now we're sitting on stage, and you've chosen to wear a striped shirt this morning. You didn't choose to wear something else. And we make very personal decisions about the way we put apps on our phone. Anything where we're allowed to make a personal decision, humans tend to do so. But with cars, we are told that it's something that you use and you take what you are sold, and you should have no interest in it other than the things that you're available to have sold to you. And I think that that should change. We feel that it's an expression of not only what we enjoy, but it's also an expression of safety, and it's an expression of so many things. And I dream of a day which has really already arrived, where you can tell me what you're interested in, and we can make that real in a vehicle. And that, to me, is something that has been long lost in the last 100 years.
Yeah, but actually it's a web community where you can just put your offers of how a car should look, what particles it should have. It's like it's a web community.
That's correct. So the way we made that happen was by building a community online, which makes it possible for anybody to come in and make simple suggestions. And if you're not talented, you just say, I have an idea. And if you are talented, then you can be helpful in making those ideas come to life.
So I have a car design, and then I come to your factory, which you call a micro factory, actually. Yes. So first, why a micro factory, and how is it different from a car factory? So
you have to understand the reason why we did it this way. And just taking a step back, what we found is that the way the car industry is built today, many people think in terms of a mass economy of scale. They immediately think, well, how do you achieve economies of scale, or don't you need that in order to be able to make cars? And we're very interested in people understanding that it is possible to put a very small amount of money into making a car and still have something that is of a high attachment. Now, that's a very hard notion, but if you believe that you could put a small amount of money, let's say $3 million into making a car, then you can dream of a different world where someone could come in and say, I'd like this to happen with my car, and the next person could come in and say, I'd like that to happen with my car. Now, it doesn't happen on a unit of one, because it costs us $3 million unless you happen to have $3 million lying around. We don't make one car for one person, but we focus on making a couple of hundred units for each type of vehicle that we do. And we look for an attachment to make the car affordable, but something that's very different than what other people would have. So if you have a design, you can go online, or you can come in physically to one of our 2 microfactories right now. We will have 5 more up by the end of 2014, and we grow this network to be able to deliver vehicles locally. That's why we call it local motors, for people who have good ideas.
So I can actually come to the factory for 2-3 weekends with my friend or a family member and just build my own car.
So there is a DIY component of what we do. When we launched the business, we made it, because we make few vehicles, we thought it ought to be more than just coming in and swapping money for it. We thought it ought to be something that you would really remember. And so there is a portion of our business where you come into the factory and you help build the car that you're going to leave with. After all, it's probably the 2nd or 3rd largest purchase you'll ever make in your life. The education for your children is something that you invest a lot of time in. Your home that you live in is something that you do, and your car is really the next biggest investment. So we think you should enjoy it and remember it, so you can come in and help build it.
I heard it cost, the Rally Fighter, which is the first car, it's $99,000.
It's $99,000. No more, no less.
Okay, but what about future plans for future vehicles, more cheaper?
I'm glad you asked the question, because when we started the business, we had to choose. As somebody often says, you can have it on time, you can have it the cost you want it, or you can have exactly what you asked for. Pick 2. Yeah. So to start a business, you have to be sure that you don't do too much at the same time. I think it's a good adage. And so for us, it wasn't about making the lowest cost vehicle. It was about making a vehicle that was what you wanted and bringing it on time with a standard of quality, something that met regulations, all of the other things. So our first vehicle ended up being $99,000. In the future, I think that the way in which we make vehicles will allow us to make vehicles less expensively than what the standard market does, but that wasn't the goal at the beginning.
And you have a goal of building 100 factories around the world, isn't it? And you have already 2 in the U.S. and 1 outside.
We have 2 in the U.S. Yeah. We have 1 more that will be up in 2 months. We will put 5 more in the U.S. this next year, and then we have 1 going into Bahrain this year. Yeah. And so that will give us the next complement for 2014.
Okay, I have a question for the audience. Who wants a microfactory here in Israel? Please raise your hands.
You have some hands.
Yeah.
Good.
Come on. Okay. So do you have any plans for a future microfactory in Israel?
I would love to have a microfactory in Israel. I think that what we are about doing is educating the world that it's possible to do cars differently. And I know that there have been susitas here in the past. I know that there have been things that have not gone so well. In every country in the world, you can almost find the same version of a susita. And that came from a time before capabilities and ideas were spread around enough for people to be able to actually build a new kind of car company. So yes, I think it's time to make a change, and we think that tight communities are the best places for us to be able to build new microfactories. But I'd like to correct you. For me, it's not about Israel. It's about places like Tel Aviv. It's about finding millions of population, the size of 1 million people, where we can put a microfactory, and then doing it again in another place where there's another 1 million people. So it's not even about a country as much as it's about a region or a city to be able to do it.
I'm for a very small car that you can find parking lot here in Tel Aviv. That's a good idea for this, very local.
Yes, so maybe the other thing I should say is that though we started with cars, it's not just big cars, it can be small cars, and it's not just cars. It can be two-wheeled vehicles if that's what's necessary in Southwest Asia. You have a lot of people that are interested in that. It's anything that moves people or gear around.
Okay, tell me about your meeting with Shai Agassi back then in 2008. What was there, really?
So it's a charged room, I'm sure. So who here has heard of Better Place? Lots of hands. So you run into lots of people as you're an entrepreneur, and I humbly say that I have thought our business was going to fail every day that we've gone along. And if you're not an entrepreneur that has one eye out for failure and one eye out for success, you're probably not a real entrepreneur. And so early on, 6 years ago, I was in Boston at the Kennedy School, and this entrepreneur, Shai Agassi, came in and said, I'm going to build these batteries that you can put in your car, and you can recharge an electric vehicle by just swapping it out. And I thought, that's a great idea. I'm glad he's doing that. And so I went and I sat, and it was a hall much like this. So I'm specifically looking for you all in the back because that was me. I squeezed in the back, and he's up in the front, and the Secretary of Energy from the United States was up here, and Senator John Kerry, who's now our Secretary of State, was over here, and Shai Agassi is sitting in the middle, and he's got this great reputation. And the lecture went forward, and I was fascinated, riveted, and it really was a great idea. And he was pulling together money and people to be able to make it happen. And so at the end, they said, are there any questions? And I went, oh, me, I've got a question. And I just said, I would like to use your battery in my cars. And he said, who are you? And I said, I'm Local Motors. You've never heard of me before. I'm starting a small company, and we're going to make vehicles in regional. So I said, tell me where you have your battery recharging station. I want to go make cars there. And he said, if you're not a big car company, I'm not interested. Because you can't have the scale that will make a difference in the world. And I think that that's a very important lesson to see, that things start small before they get big. And it is important to know that when you're building something, that there's a need for it. Well, I was standing up in the back of the room, and I had a need for those batteries, but he was not willing to share with me the standard so that I could build the cars based on those batteries. And so I would just hope that it's a lesson for all of us, and for me, it's a lesson to say, know when there's a customer and fill that customer's needs, because those are the people that are going to help you stay in business as you go forward. And I think it was a great idea. I still think it's a great idea. I just think that it needed to be executed in a place where small companies like us, instead of just big companies like Nissan, could have the opportunity to use those batteries.
Yeah, but the question is also, what can we learn from the case of Better Place to the electric industry, electric car industry? Because actually nobody really succeeded producing them. Better Place is just one, but you don't see Tesla ready enough to have those cheap electric cars. Actually, nobody arrived to this achievement.
Yes.
It's a market thing.
So let's think about the advantages of the electric car industry. Does anyone here drive an electric car? Any hands?
A pure electric one.
A pure electric, not a hybrid. Okay. So I think that when we talk about it, an electric car is something which is very much about the advantages for it. You need the ability to be able to do autonomous driving. It's going to have to be an electric car. So if you're interested in the car doing driving for you, that's something that's going to have to happen. If we want to lightweight cars, eventually it's going to be electric cars that allow us to be able to lightweight. So there are many reasons why I think it's good, but the technology is hard. And if you look at, we had Moore's Law up on the screen earlier, being able to bring down cost and maintain efficiency and keep safety up is difficult. So for early pioneers, they put batteries into cars and they build these big form factors where they stuff the battery in. The problem is that as the battery gets better and different, that form factor is going to change, which means the whole physical car needs to change. So we need to make cars at a lower volume. We need to make them more specialized to the powertrain you have, and we need to be ready to change it up as technology changes.
And cheaper.
Absolutely. That's part of what needs to change.
Yeah. So what is the next thing for you? I mean, you have a pizza delivery car, you have a bicycle. What's the next thing for Local Motors? Is it a drone, a plane?
I think we're going to stick to cars next. I mean, I think for a little while we'll stay on the ground. And a small city car is the next thing that we're interested in designing. It's a big category. There are a lot of people that are doing it. And so we want to make something that's very simple. And so I would say the announcement for us that's a very important thing, if you want to see what Local Motors is doing in the next year, we're going to make a vehicle that's makeable in a day by one machine that's going to come in and make it possible to make a vehicle, and that car is going to have less than 30 parts. That's my promise for the next year, and that's what we're going to be working on. Makeable by one machine in a day, less than 30 parts.
I want to add another last question, because we are speaking about, we spoke about before, Google is now in the headlines acquiring all kinds of robot companies and car companies, and they have the Google X in the Google car. Didn't you get an acquisition offer by Google for your factory, or do you plan to?
I think the question of who is good for Local Motors as a partner is a great one. And I built this business to be able to make a difference all over the world. If there's a partner out there that wants to change transportation around the world, they should come talk to us. I'm not interested in selling the business, but I sure am interested in partnering in order to be able to do great things. I learned a great lesson by that first day with Shai Agassi, and that is that no one person can do it all. And if you have great technology, we're here to partner. We built a crowd-based business to build the best vehicles off of the best ideas, and we know that we don't have all the best ideas out there. And I think that there are many, many companies like Google that do, and so we're interested in partnering.
Okay, Jay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
From Phoenix, Arizona.
Thank you.
Jay is about to build a factory, micro factory here in Israel. If there's anybody wants to assist him, is invited, of course, to speak with him. Thank you very much again. Thank you.
Thank you.